in terms of the coaching sessions, that even if you don't have a clear idea of what you want to talk about, just by sharing a video with me, a video of like you and your dog at your best and your dog in one of your struggles, that's going to bring up a lot of different topics, and it's going to help not only you, but it's also going to help other people in Ocean. Before I start talking a little bit about the coaching session, a couple of things came up this week that, for me, that I thought were worth sharing. And one is that I've already shared studies and experiences of how dogs mirror our emotions. And this week, because of a couple of things that Ocean members shared and have been sharing over the past couple months with me, I realized that our self-consciousness, our self-criticism, our insecurity about ourselves as dog trainers, about our competence, that our dogs read these emotions. Now, because they're not people, they don't realize we're having these emotions about ourselves. So they're noticing the emotion of insecurity, and let's say the dog is environmentally focused, the dog's gonna go, oh, my person is being insecure. Let me look around and see, what is she insecure about? They're not thinking you're feeling insecure about yourself. Or the dog, if you're like frustrated with your inability to separate your verbal cue from your body language and you just give a big huff, your dog doesn't know you're thinking that about yourself. Your dog may interpret that as being about them. So there's a really good reason to cut ourselves some slack, and that is because our dogs probably are perceiving whatever emotions we're expressing as having to do with the overall environment or them. They're not thinking that we're thinking these thoughts about ourselves. And there is Brene Brown, I don't know if you like her, but she's enjoyable for me to listen to, and she's kind of the it person right now for psychology types of things. But she did a podcast with Sonia Renee Taylor, and the title is The Body is Not an Apology. And it is a great podcast about the way we women feel about our bodies and how it can put us in states of self-consciousness and self-criticism and all that. And a few Ocean members have commented about how they look on video. And I've jokingly said, well, if you're noticing that, you're not observing your dog, which is also true. But anyway, if you feel self-conscious about seeing yourself on video, highly recommend that podcast. I know that Chris Garrett has watched it and she got a lot out of it. And I have to say that I've always been self-conscious about what I think people are thinking about the way I look. And I've become highly aware of that during this COVID period, because without a bunch of eyes on me, I realized my self-esteem has gotten a lot higher. And then listening to that podcast it helped me realize where that's coming from, the societal norms and all that. So anyway, if you want to pursue a better, more positive, healthy relationship with yourself about your body, I highly recommend that podcast. And it is related to Ocean, because the better mental and emotional state we're in, the more our dogs are going to mirror that, and the more fun we're going to have, and the more fun our dogs are going to have. So that was one little thought I thought was a significant small thought, but has the potential to shift things for people like it did for me. And on a similar note, just, creating some, like a few moments of awareness of like really zeroing in on where are we before we start training? Like, am I feeling a little bit stressed? Am I feeling, agitated? Do I not feel like training? Do I feel like, I just want to get this thing done? I'm tired of this problem, blah, 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 whatever that is, to be aware of it. And my personal perspective is, if I can't get myself at least in a neutral place, I don't have to be positive and happy and yahoo-y, but if I can't get myself into a positive place, I'm not going to start a training session until I can get myself, at least in neutral. So I'm not bringing negativity to the training session. And often all it takes to get myself out of a funk is to be aware that I'm in the funk, and to look at my dogs and to smile at my dogs, and somehow that just shifts me. So whatever it is that shifts you, I think it's good just to check in with ourselves to make sure that we are bringing neutral or positive emotions and mental states to dog training. Certainly can't hurt, will help, I think, the fun for the person and the dog. Let's see. Oh, and this is one other thought I had. That, at this point, I feel really confident about my dog training abilities. And I wonder if that is a key ingredient for people who are successful with dog training skills, that they feel confident in their dogs then mirror confidence. So for those of you who are new at dog training, you're not going to feel as confident year 1 as you are year 13 or year 20. But try to muster up everything you've got that says, hey, I'm here. I can observe my dog. I can respond intuitively to what's happening with my dog. I have the power to end sessions if they're not going well, and to end, to do something my dog is going to find fun. So, muster up as much confidence as you can, and then observe your dog and see how they respond when you're more confident. Does the dog then go, oh, she's more confident, like the whole situation all of a sudden feels safer and maybe more focused or whatever. And one other side note is, with dogs that do funny things, like I was watching old videos of my first dog, Jake, who, when he would, kind of blow a gasket, he would just run around. And he never stopped doing that entirely in life. He just did it less and less often, that he didn't feel the need to blow a gasket. But especially with these young dogs that are doing stuff like that, that they just, they'll go sniff, or they'll go, just like leave the session for a second. Instead of thinking of that as a problem to be solved, I think there's some real benefit to just seeing it as an expression and making some adjustments in your training sessions, but not trying to alleviate that. Because if you focus on alleviating that, instead of focusing on where you're going, you're focusing on where you don't want to go. And I think in the process of focusing on what you don't want, you're putting energy and attention on it, but also by trying to extinguish that entirely, I think you could end up suppressing your dog's natural emotional expressions. And you want your dog to express themselves. You don't want them to freeze and to show you nothing. So that is your dog's expression, and just acknowledge it as such and welcome it instead of trying to extinguish it. And that doesn't mean, I'm not talking about letting the dog go on and on and on. If it's environmentally focused, like I wouldn't let a dog that did that, stare at something, on and on and on. They could look at it and I would draw them out of it, but I wouldn't try to have the dog never, ever, ever do that again in its life. That I feel like that could be counterproductive, stifling, and, ultimately focusing too much on what you don't want. So, and one other note that came up is because I teach, and because I also take a class, which is super fun to take a class, that it is so important to be an advocate for your dog. That the last few weeks at Marin Humane, we've been setting up these USDA at home courses. And because most people don't have huge agility fields, these courses have been small. The largest of the sizes is 60 by 80. And the steeplechase one, which is more flowing, I ran to code on it and got him through it the first time, so yay, that was fine. But this week's, when I looked at the course, I thought, I am not going to torque my dog around it. And it was really tempting just to want to do it to get the cue, because I'd already run the other biathlon part, which I wouldn't have run had I known I wasn't going to run the second part of it. So, it was hard to not run the course, but I felt like I didn't want to torque my dog. And I believe that if we are good advocates for our dogs, we can keep them healthy and in the sport a lot longer. And, even like with instructors, if they're working with groups of people, what is appropriate for every dog in the class might not be appropriate for your dog. And there is a balance of being open-minded and trying things, but also being aware of, what is fair. What is your dog communicating if you're trying something that just doesn't feel right for your dog? If that method doesn't feel right, that to find a gracious way of saying, I feel like my dog's had enough, that type of thing. So I feel strongly about that. Anyway, so these coaching sessions, I already mentioned that these are all about the implementation of Ocean principles. And I can say from a personal perspective, as committed as I am to these principles and to mark training and to all the benefits of that, that before I started Ocean and was bobbing around on my own without any people who were thinking similar thoughts, I stopped doing mark training and I started doing what everybody around me was doing. So the purpose of Ocean going from the foundations class into this ongoing membership is to keep us all connected with each other. And this is as much of a benefit for me as it is for you, that to keep us emphasizing observing our dog, connecting with the dog in front of us, prioritizing joy and enthusiasm over skill, behavior, external behaviors, that it is really important to be surrounded with like-minded people. And these coaching sessions, what you're going to see is a variety of training experience. So Catherine and Cap, whose video I'm sharing this week, Catherine's an experienced trainer like crazy. She's got great instincts. Cap is a 7-month-old dog. And I just made a few notes of things I really liked about what I saw in Catherine's choices is that she's not demanding that Cap stay entirely focused on her the whole time. Cap is in that adolescent phase where all this easy training goes out the window for a few months. And I really remember that with Dakota. More so, Lil didn't have such a dramatic one, but Dakota went from 100% recall, just perfect this, that, and the other thing, to like, oh my gosh, I'm not even sure I can take him off leash. And there were a couple months where, he was not trustworthy. So I really like that Catherine allows Cap to disconnect from training. And it's really a sign that the dog, that this young dog, let them express themselves. If we want our dogs to show us and communicate to us, we need to allow them to express it versus to try to contain and stifle the dog to try to get them to do what we want them to do. So that was brilliant. And I like that she kept the number of reps super short and didn't do too many before she'd have these play breaks. So she was rewarding with food while working. And hi, Catherine. And working with food while, doing the skill work and then taking breaks with the toy. And I also like that when we were having long conversations, she just popped the leash on Cap. So great idea, right? Whenever an instructor is talking to you, and if you, with a mature dog, you can say, go to the shade. Like I'll tell Dakota, take a break, and he will go lie down in the shade. That's fine when I'm talking to somebody. But if I have a young dog or like a terrier where I don't want them practicing things I don't want them to do in association with agility, like sniffing or marking or sniffing or marking or sniffing or marking, I'm going to either pick up that dog or pick up that dog when I'm talking to somebody. So it's a lot easier to keep things we don't want from happening if we don't let the dogs practice. And this is especially true for dogs that do have a strong environmental focus, right? We have a dog that's concerned about the environment, and when we disengage from them, they all of a sudden are hyper vigilant about it. Not in the best interest of that dog. So in that case, as soon as I am starting to talk to the instructor, I'm going to be, feeding, I'm going to be looking and talking or feeding my dog while listening. And this is something that I also did with the terriers and Dakota when he was younger, is I can actually listen to an instructor and look at my dog and interact with my dog. So I'd be throwing the ball in Dakota's mouth or feeding the terriers, enough treats where they were just focused on me. Some dogs do really well with when we disengage, they disengage, and they don't do anything like that is counterproductive. So in that case, yeah, if they're just going to go lie down and watch you from the shade, I think it's totally fine. You don't have to be right there. But I think I made my point about that. So let's see. Super important. What else? Oh, and a topic that came up with Catherine and Cap that's come up with every single person I've done coaching with so far. And incidentally, I have a backlog of coaching sessions that I need to produce and get videos done on. And as I produce them, I'm putting them on the Ocean for Dogs website. But I will be putting them out week by week here so that we can have discussions about them. But anyway, back to the topic. So the releasing with motion and verbal at the same time seems to be a common thread, and the lack of clarity about what words we use for what. And there seems to be, two main ways of releasing dogs from the start line and from contacts. One is to use break, free, okay, whatever your release word is. And the other is to just say the next whatever thing. So you would say at the start line, you'd say jump, or you'd say A-frame or tunnel, whatever. People are very successful with that second way that I've just mentioned. I personally have always liked to use a word that means your release from the position that I asked you to be in. So I only use that word when I've asked my dog to be static. And the reason I like that is I feel that it's easier for me, but it's also, I feel like it's easier for my dog to know there's one word in all the words I use, and that word alone means, my computer went on standby, sorry. That means you are released from the static position that I cued before. So my dog doesn't have to be listening for 7 words that might come out of my mouth and ignoring 40 other words that might come out of my mouth. So for me, it helps, and for me, it also helps that I am never changing my motion when I say my break word, which happens to be okay, which if I could do it all over again, I would not pick that word, but that's my word. So I have practiced that when I say okay, most of the time, I'm not twitching, flicking, walking, doing anything, turning my head sideways. I'm not doing any of those things when I say okay, but I can do those things as soon as I'm done saying okay. So I can say, okay, tunnel, and while I'm saying tunnel, I can talk. And I feel like it's easier for me to aim for a moment when I can move. So the movement can come with the next word, which is tunnel, or it could be jump, whatever. Then to say, don't move when I'm saying any word, the first word. That to me is a harder thing to get my brain. It's like for my brain, it's easier to process. There's this one word, okay, that I never move while I'm saying it. That to me is clearer and easier to train myself to do. And just my gut feeling is it's easier for dogs to also know that there's just this one word. Now, very, very good trainers release on any word for the next obstacle, and they're very successful at it. So if that's your choice, I am certainly going to support you in doing that and doing it well by not releasing with motion and whatever word you use to release your dog. One other point though, you can occasionally release with your voice and motion if it's only occasional, because that's just one more random thing, right? And I noticed on some of my videos, I do a little something body languagey when I'm saying my okay. And when I saw it and I went, oh my gosh, that's not good. I need to correct it. I thought, no, that's part of being random, is that sometimes they are going to coincide. And how do you know if it's coinciding too much? Well, if your dog has a rock solid start line and contact stay, then you are good enough. So it goes back to that same theory. You don't have to be perfect. You just need to be perfect enough to not confuse your dog or yourself.